Hi, I am here with Andrew Quick, who is the co-director of the award-winning Imitating the Dog company. And they are doing a retelling of Macbeth that's coming to the Lowry from the 8th to the 11th of March. Now, it is going to be a version of Macbeth like you have never seen before. So thank you very much for chatting with us today at Manchester Theatres, Andrew.
Lovely to be here with you and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So before we get to Macbeth, can we just have a little bit of a delve into Imitating the Dog? Because I wish this company had been around when I was doing my studies, because you make theatre and stories that might be a bit trickier so relevant by merging like technology and things like that with traditional theatre. So can you just tell us a little bit about what you do at Imitating the Dog?
Well, we're known for combining, I suppose, theatre and video and sound. We often take quite well-known texts or novels or plays, and we usually interrogate the text, I suppose, through technology and storytelling. So we did a version of Dracula, but we did do a little bit of the original story, but we told the story after Dracula supposedly killed in the novel, and we told the story from Mina Harker's point of view, one of the central female figures, and that went into the 20th century. We did a version of Night of the Living Dead, which is a zombie movie, where we played the original movie on one screen, and then we remade in real time, shot for shot, the whole movie using live cameras and actors in this space.
Oh, it's incredible.
And what we were doing in that was we would kind of sort of showing how the film is constructed and then revealing its sort of broader themes, as well as it's a great story of people trapped in a house being attacked by zombies. What's not to like?
Exactly. What is not to like? And the same can be said for Macbeth. What is not to like? And because of these different skills and things that you use, you're able to, as you've said, you can kind of retell stories in a new light. And so with Macbeth, just starting with the setting alone, so we've gone from the Scottish moors and the big castle to this futuristic metropolitan city. And how do you get from there to there? And how do you use technology to support that?
Well, we took the basic story of Macbeth. And then we first of all, we were very interested in trying to make a version where we could have some sympathy with the Macbeths. That was one of our starting off points. So we started to think about, well, where could we set it and what age would the Macbeths be? And a lot of the recent films of the Macbeths have been middle-aged or quite old. And we were thinking, well, what happens if they're really young, like late teens, early 20s? And so what story would that be? And then we started thinking, well, you know, kings and the hierarchy of, you know, law, crime organizations have something similar. You know, they have leaders and soldiers and warriors and people who control regions. So I started researching into sort of Japanese yakuza. I love those sort of movies, Japanese crime movies. And I thought, oh, there's a real parallel here. And Kurosawa, a Japanese filmmaker, had made a version of Macbeth called Throne of Blood back in the 50s or early 60s, which is a great version set in a kind of samurai world. And that was a trigger. And then you think, okay, where can we, so we've got these young kids, as it were, they're in the crime organization. So where do we set it? And I sort of started to think about a kind of broken or even more broken version of London. As a giant free port where, you know, law and order was pretty, you know, not really, not as controlled as we perhaps used to, and crime and law works close and hand in hand. So I started to invent this place, and we drew on films like Blade Runner and, as I said, the neo noir of Asia as a kind of mix of population and ethnicities, and create this new story out of the old story of Macbeth, but keeping very close to the original plot.
Yeah.
So Macbeth kills Duncan, but he's not a king; he's a crime lord.
I love it. It's
and
so
then
clever.
you know, and we also got very interested in Lady Macbeth and tried to because she sort of disappears in the play, the original play, in the second half, and we've got a few twists in our version, which I won't talk about now because you have to come and see it. But she's more developed perhaps than a lot of other versions, although people are doing more versions where they're focusing on her a bit more. And the technology, so we have a video wall which has backdrops, and then we've got our three witches are the storytellers, and they play all the characters.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to come to that. So you've got these three witches who they're almost now, because you've got this street scene, the kind of like con artists, and they also play all the other characters, but they interact with the audience as well, don't they? Yeah,
they're like kind of clowns, really. They've got a bit of clown makeup on. They're like kind of they refer to at one point to Heath Ledger's the Joker. They're jokers. They're kind of, are they devils? Are they are they witches? Are they clowns? And they basically construct the world, just like the prophecy in the original play, where they, tell Macbeth what's going to happen, and then he follows it. Our witches construct the world that they fall into, and they play all the characters. Now, we always see them as these sort of clown-like witches, but the Macbeths see them as the characters as they're being described. And yes, they do interact with the audience. They assume that we're in on the whole scheme of bringing the Macbeths down.
Fantastic.
So they storytell, they comment, they add things, they clarify. I mean, the plot in the original Macbeth is quite difficult to follow. Not the story. The story is really simple. Ambitious lord kills king, takes over, is very violent, tries to keep control, and then is killed in turn, and then order's restored. I mean, that's the basic plot. But the intricacies of the plot, of all the names and everybody, it's actually quite hard to follow. Yeah. And our witches are a bit helpful because they remind the audience who's speaking and who Angus is and who Malcolm is and who Macduff is.
Yeah,
so they're kind of adding bits of exposition just to sort of anchor the plot.
Yeah, so you're almost guided through, aren't you? And I think you do that with like cameras as well, don't you?
We focus. So the cameras are always on Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, and it's a kind of, and they're mainly in close up. It's almost like the witches are going into their souls to try through the camera to try and find out what makes. There's a line, what makes them tick. Yeah. Why are they doing the things that they do? And the cameras are like really close scrutiny.
And I think that's really interesting with the modern culture element as well, because it brings in, first of all, the idea of social media, that you literally, everything that you say and do can be recorded, can be out there, and that's kind of being highlighted. But you've also got this, taking it a stage further, this idea of agency, that they think that they're in control of the world, but actually are they being manipulated? Are they being, and as well as social media, I mean, even that is kind of with energy bills and things at the minute, it's kind of this big thing. So is that a parallel that you were kind of trying to highlight throughout?
Yes, I mean, you're spot on. We've actually talked about it in exactly those terms about what is their agency. They feel they've got agency, but actually they've got very little. So, it's like, I mean, one example would be when you go shopping in Sainsbury's or whatever supermarket chain you choose to go to, you think you're choosing stuff, but actually it's already pre-selected for you, and they put things at a certain height on shelves, so that your eyes drawn to it, and the whole way it works. But you feel like you're freely kind of moving around this space, and it's very similar for them in a different storytelling world. And that's one of the things that we're very interested in, I suppose, the social context within which they operate. I mean, this sounds like it's very dry, but hopefully it's always entertaining at the same time. Fundamentally, it's a great story, and you're following these sort of the tragedy is that they really think they're going to get something out of this, and of course they don't. They're doomed from the start, really, and we all know that, but they don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way that you've done it is why that this story that some might shy away from because it's Shakespeare is entertaining. It is brilliant. And you've mentioned some of the influences, like you mentioned Blade Runner, and I think I read somewhere that there's a bit of Tarantino thrown in. And so what kind of influences might a younger audience recognize?
Well, it's very influenced by those sort of films, and it's a violent play, and we've got violence in it. It is quite violent, but it's quite stylized. So it's got manga, it's got Studio Ghibli, it's got this sort of visual backdrop that's people will be very used to from cartoons and graphic novels as well, and film. So we're storytelling through a kind of set of other reference points, and the music sort of reminiscent of sort of the Massive Attack kind of 90s Bristol music scene, which is very percussive and kind of gives you this sort of driving sense of things progressing from one thing to another. James Hamilton, who's done the music, has done a great job, actually. I mean, so yeah, we hope we're bringing material to a new audience and a younger audience, but the heart of this show is the Shakespeare's verse. We're still keeping 70% of the verse as it was originally written. We have changed it a bit and changed this. So kings are capos, and we changed the odd lines here and there, but it starts off quite angry and quite violent, and then it quietens down, and then we sort of slowly introduce the Shakespeare into the mix, and by the second half you're in the Shakespeare, and hopefully people have got used to it and they're watching it and it's framed and they're open to the kind of beauty and the complexity of Shakespeare's writing, which we do love. It's very dynamic, but it is hard, and you have to you have to slowly introduce it, really.
Yeah, and that's why it sounds so clever. It's like you're sort of drip feeding it, but against the backdrop of things that people will notice and know and understand. And even like the violence that you've mentioned, I just want to touch on that, just because what I don't want is for anyone with maybe a more delicate stomach or teachers panicking about, because it does have a 14+ age guidance.
It's got a bit of swearing in it too.
Yes, I don't want anyone to be put off. So what kind of levels can we expect, just to sort of ease the mind of any teachers thinking of bringing students?
Yeah, I mean, it's got swearing in it. It's got strong language. The witches do swear quite a lot here and there. There is violence. Obviously, there's the violence of the original play. But it is stylized and it's described. And that's the backstory of Lady Macbeth. We give a bit of that. You find about what her backstory was, and there's violence there as well, mentioned and described. So yeah, 14. It's not for anybody under 14, really. And it's quite loud. It starts off loud, it starts off fast, and then it quietens down. And I think that's that's it's structured in that way to guide you into the kind of drama of it.
Yeah.
But we've played to a lot of school kids in Doncaster, and they were a tough audience, but they really quietened down and watched the play and really loved it. I think we've had great responses from schools so far, but it's important that they understand there's violence and there's strong language.
Yeah, well, I think it is absolutely fantastic what you're doing, because Macbeth is my favorite Shakespeare play anyway, but I think the idea of I champion anybody who takes something, and like you say, it's not that you're trying to alter the text, you're not trying to rewrite Shakespeare's work, but you're just presenting it in a new form of storytelling that really opens up, because ultimately that's what it is. It's a great story.
It's a great story, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what Imitating the Dog do. They're able to take stories and present them in a way that bring in new audiences, and I think that's fantastic. So just to finish then, what should people look out for? Are there any surprises? Is there anything we've not covered that you kind of want to say, come to watch it because of this?
No, I think we've covered everything. I think that there's this great secret story that's revealed about Lady Macbeth that will be a surprise. There's great acting in it. The actors are really strong. Lady Macbeth and Macbeth are, I think, brilliant in the show, and they bring a kind of different energy, being young and being kind of dynamic that I think is not present in shows with older actors. I think the witches are, there's a kind of choreography and an elegance to what they do, which I'm very proud of. But at the heart, I think, as you've said, it is Shakespeare's story, and it is a retelling, but we stick pretty close to the themes of the play around power and ambition and hope. And what happens when you make what you know is possibly a bad decision, and then you're trapped then, having made that bad decision, you have to make another one, and you can't get out of the trap of the first decision that you made, which I think we all kind of understand. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, yes.
We've all done, I mean, murdering someone's a very big, terrible, bad decision.
Oh, yeah.
But we've done micro versions of that, and seeing how chaos unfolds in a local level. So it's a very human and recognizable story, I think.
Yeah.
And one that I think audiences still enjoy.
I couldn't agree more, and I cannot wait to come. It is at the Lowry from the 8th to the 11th of March. So please, everybody, come along and watch Imitating the Dog's Macbeth. Lead on, Macduff. Thank you so much for chatting with us, Andrew.
Thanks so much, and great to speak to you all.
Thank you.